Hi, thanks for joining us today. So as you know, we're here to talk to you about how you can set up a secure and flexible flow for your visitors, employees, and contractors as part of a hybrid workplace. We're just going to wait a few minutes for a few more people to arrive, and then we're going to get started. Okay, so there are quite a few of us here now, so let's jump in with a quick introduction to your hosts. I'm Michele Martinelli, and I'm a product marketer at Proxyclick. And with me today is Rafa Figueroa, who's our VP of Customer Success. Rafa, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Thank you very much, Michele. And yes, and thank you everyone for attending. As the VP of Customer Success at Proxyclick, I'm in charge of managing our global customer success team that is responsible for our support, our deployment and relationship management services, as well as our technical support.
Great, thanks, Rafa. Now, if you have a question for us during the session, just use the Q&A box and we'll do our best to answer live. And if we don't get to it, we'll be in touch with you after the webinar. And if you want to get in touch about something that we discuss, you can reach out to us on support@proxyclick.com. Okay, so I think we're ready. So let's get started.
So this is our agenda for today. We're going to start with a quick overview of the situation many companies find themselves in. Then we'll have a look at how Proxyclick is helping companies face these challenges. Next up, Rafa will give us a demo of some of the features discussed. And finally, we'll take your questions. The webinar should take just under 30 minutes. So let's dive in. It's been more than a year since I've been going to the office regularly, and I'm far from alone. But now, with vaccines being rolled out, it looks like the return to normality isn't too far away. But what is that normality going to look like? A recent study from the Boston Consulting Group found that 89% of workers favor a hybrid, flexible model going forward. Now, this was a global study of more than 200,000 workers across 190 countries, so pretty representative. And it gives you an idea of where we're heading. And now, as we move towards this increasingly hybrid world of work, companies are being challenged to provide more flexibility without compromising on security. They're being forced to reconsider how they keep their people safe and how they deliver secure and compliant physical access when businesses' needs can change every day. Because the truth is that no matter how your employees, visitors, and contractors flow in and out of your properties, security will always be paramount. And this quote from the VP of Future of Work Research at IDC really speaks to the fact that things have changed for the long term. There will be no return to the pre-pandemic workplace. And what we'll have instead is a richer, more complex relationship between people and the places they go to get their work done. And that's a world that will need its own security solutions and processes. And so on this slide, you can see some of the challenges that are keeping Keith, that's the security person in the middle, up at night. And broadly speaking, those are built around making sure everyone on site is supposed to be there, went through the correct processes to be there, and is respecting not only data privacy regulations, but also the privacy of the employees, visitors, and other people who access the premises. And I say that because it's one thing to be legally compliant, it's another to treat personal data with the respect it deserves, especially as COVID-19 has led to companies collecting more and more sensitive data around health, for example, whether or not someone has been vaccinated. But more on that later. And of course, Keith's colleagues, Amanda and Mark, have their own interlinked challenges. But for this webinar, we're focused on security. If you want to find out more about our health and safety offerings, please speak to our customer success team. So how is Proxyclick helping Keith and his team keep people and property safe in this new, more complex world of work? Well, I'm going to talk you through a few use cases and explain how some of our new and existing features will help you do just that. Now, when you invite someone to visit your workplace, ideally you want to avoid them getting stuck in a queue in your lobby, or worse, being turned away. With remote registration, you can ask them to pre-register before they arrive. That might mean collecting some details, asking them to sign an NDA, getting them to agree to health and safety guidelines, or even making sure they don't appear on an internal or industry watch list. More on that later. This feature lets you screen your visitors and collect information by asking questions, displaying messages, videos, and images. You can also use it with smart rules to decline visits based on their answers and protect your employees and other visitors. Now, it goes without saying that different industries, companies, and people all face different security challenges. And while some operate relatively straightforward spaces with limited numbers of people flowing in and out, others have to deal with added complexity, whether that means R&D facilities, locations with specialized equipment like manufacturing plants, or simply appealing lounge areas created for employees. These are all scenarios where an extra layer of security can prove vital. In addition, these days, companies also want to add an approval process for external visitors in the context of COVID-19. In many geographies, only essential visitors are allowed access to workplaces, and while general occupancy controls work well to stop too many employees showing up on a given day, visitors need to be managed more closely. So enter our brand new visit approval feature. It lets you better control your visitor flows by requiring invitations to be approved before they're issued. Whenever a new visit is created, the visitor is not immediately invited and is instead listed as in review in the logbook. A user with approval rights must then accept or deny the request to determine whether an invitation is sent. This powerful new control is an easy way to add an extra layer of security to the areas that need it, and it's available today. There are two sides to visitor management. On the one hand, you want your guests to have a great experience and feel welcome, and on the other, you want to make sure that no one who shouldn't be there is allowed in. People you want to keep out will vary depending on what industry or type of company you work for, but they could include disgruntled former employees, previous visitors who caused you issues. We've even had instances of stalkers, and this can go all the way through to criminals or terrorists. Watch lists can help you keep those people out. Now, there are two types of watch lists. An internal one, so that's one that your company compiles, and that might include disgruntled former employees, for example, and an external watch list. This will have been created by an external organization and could include known criminals. Now, when someone on the list tries to check in, Proxyclick alerts the people you choose in your company. They might be front desk staff or security. Either way, it lets them know who's trying to check in and tells them why they have been flagged. The alert is discreet, so you can handle the situation as delicately as needed. Now, let me ask you, do you have any formal identity verification processes in place? And if not, how do you know the people on your premises are exactly who they say they are? Verifying identities before granting access to visitors can play a key role in keeping your people and places safe. With ID Match, once your visitor scans both sides of their picture ID and takes their kiosk selfie, two things can happen. The images match and your visitor is granted access, or they don't and your security personnel can manually check. The process is really fast and accurate and greatly reduces the time it takes your personnel to manually check IDs, leaving them free to focus on their job. The feature supports more than 6,000 ID types, including state identification cards from all 50 US states, national IDs, driver's licenses, and passports from more than 200 countries. And if you're wondering if it's GDPR compliant, the answer is yes. It respects all data privacy regulations, and Proxyclick doesn't store any copies of the IDs, only the picture and the name of the visitor. Now, when it comes to access control integrations, Proxyclick is head and shoulders above the pack. And integrating with your existing hardware means your security team automatically keeps track of who enters and leaves your premises, where they went, and who they met. This also makes for an easily auditable process. On top of the security and auditing benefits, this means there's no need to manually update multiple platforms, as visitor and employee details are automatically synced. You can also provide digital access keys using the Prover app or QR codes and grant or remove access to designated areas based on the latest information. For example, say an employee leaves the company, you can just take away their access. Or say a contractor signs an NDA, you can grant them access. Integrating with your access control lets you take advantage of your physical infrastructures without sacrificing ease of use and real-time control and visibility. Now, I mentioned privacy before, and I'd like to touch on it again because it's so important and it's always been part of Proxyclick's DNA. Firstly, we're SOC 2 Type 2 certified, which guarantees our processes and infrastructure meet the strictest guidelines. Secondly, we believe in easy customization. You decide which users have access to which information. Our user rights can be very granular. You also decide exactly how to tailor your flows. For example, some geographies might have different rules to follow, and you can adapt for each location. You decide what data to capture and how long to store it for. You can automate data deletion and only ask for the information you need. No more, no less. At a time when more and more data is being collected and includes health data, it's important to know that Proxyclick gives you peace of mind in this area as well. So I talked about customization, and that's what Rafa is going to give us a flavor of during his demo in just a minute. But first, I wanted to give you a few examples of how powerful these features are when used in tandem. So let me give you an example. Say, let's take John. He works for a manufacturing company, and he invites a contractor to visit the R&D lab to work on a project. He sends an invitation out via Proxyclick, but before it goes out, his supervisor receives a request for approval. The contractor actually matches a known criminal on an external watch list. Visit approval denied. The contractor never made it through the front door. Here's another example, this time looking at visit approval and an ACS integration. John invites another contractor. This time, the person doesn't get flagged, the invitation gets sent out, and the contractor is asked to sign an NDA remotely and watch a security process video. The contractor completes both and is sent a QR code that grants them access via the turnstiles on the day that they arrive. This QR code grants them access to not only the turnstiles at the main entrance, but also those at the entrance to the R&D facility. As soon as the visit ends, the QR code is deactivated. Smooth and simple. And now on that note, Rafa is going to dive in and show you how it all comes together in practice.
Thank you, Michele. Let's get started with the first step in the secure flow, which is, of course, the pre-registration of the visitors. With Proxyclick, you have the ability to pre-register visitors. That way you know who will be on your location, when, what time, and additional information that may be relevant to their visit. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and use my Outlook add-in. This is going to allow me to create a visit on my calendar, just as normally I would do for any of the events that I may partake on. Of course, I will be able to enter any information that is relevant to the meeting. So my visitors in this case are aware of the agenda, for example. And then in addition to that, I will have the ability to answer already certain questions that will allow me to identify any potential threats or allow me to identify any potential problems with any of my visitors. The way that we will do this is through answering the questions on the add-in and then attaching the meeting directly from here. Once that has been completed, those visits will automatically appear on my logbook. And as you can see now, these visits are in review. This means that my approver has now received a notification to verify and review these specific visits and to allow them to review the information that I have entered and make a decision if this visitor should be welcome in my location. The approver then will have access to the pending approvals queue, in which they will have access to general information about the visitor, the previous history of that visitor, additional fields like the company name or the reason for the visit, the license plate number, the mobile phone number, any information that may be relevant for them to be able to make a decision. And based on that, they will have the ability to approve or deny that visit. In this case, we're going to go ahead and approve this specific visit. And then at that point, the visitor will be notified of their invitation to Mindtech. Mindtech is a technology company that has a lot of proprietary information, and therefore the approval process is very important for them. This will allow them to protect them from any potential individuals that may pose a risk to their technology, their employees, contractors in the building, or anyone else in the building for that sense. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and review one more. That would be David Cruz here. I can take a look at the information, and based on the information, I can say that this visitor should not be allowed to come in. He's a potential competitor from Mindtech, and therefore, according to our policies, he should not be allowed in our premises. Therefore, as an approver, I will go ahead and deny that visit. At that point, the host has already been notified that that visitor has been denied. And immediately on the logbook, we will see that Jerry has been switched from in review to expected, and David Cruz from in review to denied. The visitor will not know that it was denied. They will simply not receive an invitation for that event. There is one important thing about the secure flows that I would like to review next, and that relates to the information that the visitor would be able to provide at any given time. The additional layer of security that you can add to your flow is remote registration. Remote registration allows you to send an additional questionnaire with questions specific to a contractor, a visitor, a business contact, a truck driver that may arrive in your location to pre-screen them before they arrive on site. In this case, what I'm showing on my screen is the remote registration questionnaire for Mindtech. In this case, we're being asked regarding the purpose of our visit. As I mentioned, this is a business meeting. I will also have the ability to add questions related to the current health situation to be able to screen any potential risks when it comes to COVID. I will have the ability to include any compliance questions that may be relevant to my industry, like knowing if someone belongs to a sanctioned institution, if someone comes from a country of interest, or if they represent a government agency. Once the screening has been completed using our smart rules, we will be able to determine if that visitor or that contractor should be welcome on site. And at the end, in addition to the information regarding to their visit, they will have the ability to add the mobile pass to their wallet. A final layer of security is the Proxyclick kiosk, which allows locations with unexpected visitors to complete the registration on the kiosk. And in addition to that, for expected visitors, the ability to register the time that they arrive and that they leave your location. That way, your logbook will always be up to date. However, the kiosk has additional security layers that you can add to make a flow even more secure. Let me show you some of them. Let's start with the agreement. The agreement can be very important in the case of agreements regarding confidentiality, display instructions about health or safety, and then to allow you to keep record of these agreements in any kind of storage that you may use. Proxyclick allows you to integrate with different storage systems that will allow you to keep these agreements organized and at reach at any time. Once the visitor has agreed to the agreement or answer any questions in the kiosk, we will also print a badge. This badge will allow you to identify visitors on site by color, by name, by using the QR code that was printed or assigned to them at the time that they checked in. And in addition to that, it will allow you to display important instructions to contractors like safe and healthy, or things like not able to smoke in certain areas of the building. Once the unexpected visitor has completed the flow in the kiosk, then these changes will be automatically reflected in your logbook. Then in the logbook, your security teams or your reception teams will have the ability to manage these visitors. As you can see, Mary Jones has been placed on site at this time. On site is an intermediate status between an expected and a checked-in visitor. This allows your security teams or your reception to verify their identity by asking for a valid form of identification. This allows them to identify the visitor in front of them or to ask any additional questions that may be required due to your screening process. At the time that one of your team members places them in checked in, this is registered in our activity log, and therefore they will be able to immediately check at any time what were the steps that were taken throughout the visit and by who and at what time specifically these steps were taken. This comes very useful in the case of a security incident on site. Additionally, you will be able to automate the ID verification. This can be done with ID match. ID match can work with your kiosk to allow you to identify your visitors as soon as they arrive on site, scan their valid identification into the kiosk, and complete the check-in process. This will allow you then to see the level of confidence that Proxyclick has on the visitor being the person on the valid identification and provides you with a percentage. You then will be able to make decisions on the logbook to let that person in or not. With ID Match and with all these services, you will be able to configure different flows and different combinations of these on your settings. You will be able to find approval and activate or deactivate at any time, remote registration to configure your registration flow with any questions, messages, images, or videos that may be relevant to your policy, to configure your agreements, including the ability to configure multiple agreements for multiple types of visitors, and of course, at building security features like ID Match or watchlists. With this in mind, we keep privacy on the top of everything that we do. And with our automated retention period, you will have the ability to delete any personal data automatically according to your policy. That can be on any number of days, months, or years that you define for your company. And with this, I finish my part of the demo. Now I go back to my colleague, Michele.
Thanks for that, Rafa. Super interesting, super well explained. So while you're giving us the demo, we've had a few questions come in. So I'm going to kick things off with the first one. So which access control systems does Proxyclick integrate with? Okay, so we integrate with more than 10 of the leading providers. Recently, Brevo, OpenPath, and Genea. You can find a full list on our website. But even if you work with a system that we don't integrate with, that doesn't mean an integration isn't in the works or that we can't get around that for your visitor flows. So just get in touch with support@proxyclick.com and we can talk through your options. Let me see what other questions we have. Okay, Rafa, maybe this one for you. So do these features, the security features, I guess, combine with any of the health and safety processes?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, of course, we have the ability to integrate this with a lot of the processes because on remote registration, we had features like adding videos that could train regarding the policy, features like adding images that could also show visuals, especially on the manufacturing industry or any kind of warehouses where this may be necessary. And then on top of that, with questionnaire in advance in the remote registration, you will be able to pre-screen any visitors depending on the type of visit that they are doing. It could be for a client, or it could be for a candidate, or it could be for a contractor, and then customize those questions in that questionnaire to pre-screen them when they arrive on site. Of course, if you add approval to that, then you will have the ability to also verify information about the visitor in advance.
Okay, so they really go hand in hand there.
Absolutely, absolutely. When we talk about security at a building, it's very important that we take it from the physical security perspective, right? Where access control could, for example, come in handy, but then also safe and health, which are especially in today's times very relevant. And as we prepare to return to the office, of course, it will become still more relevant.
Yeah. Okay, next question. So is there separate hardware needed for ID match? So that's a great question, and yes, there is. We recommend using hardware from Ayla Technology, and that's because their hardware is easy to use, to install, and they're our preferred partners. So if you need more information about how that works, then just reach out to our customer success team, and they'll give you the full details. But super easy to install. Okay, I don't see any questions coming in, but if you had a question and you didn't have time to ask it, again, just get in touch on support@proxyclick.com or use the chat in your dashboard. We'll be sharing this recording with you. So if you have any colleagues or any peers who you think might be interested, please feel free to share it with them. And yeah, that's it from us. So have a great day and hope to see you all soon.